You're always thinking.
I'm
about the
always
next
thinking.
thing.
I am always thinking about the next thing. Here we are. I know you guys saw this last week, but it's quilted now.
And bound.
Actually quilted and bound. It was
Totally
just getting off the frame. And here it is. That Pam, I tell you what, you get it done and it takes her a night to get it finished. Look at how perfect paper piecing. Paper piecing gives you perfect points. Look at those
Say
points.
that 15
Perfect.
times.
Yeah, say that fast. Paper piecing gives you perfect points. That's a test. It is. It's really nice. There it is. Well, hello. How are you guys? We are here at Quilt Beginnings in Columbus, Ohio. Nice to see everyone. This weather doesn't know what it wants to do. There's been a lot of rain, a lot of gray. I think we're going to get it. The sun's going to come out here. Actually, the sun's shining right this minute. That's pretty exciting.
They're mowing our yard out there.
Yes, the
doing yard
lawnmowers. Yes,
work
you wake up to the yard work now.
Yeah.
Yes. Getting plants planted, getting some pretty things in your yards. It's that time of year. I love this time of year, actually. I love the longer days.
Yeah.
When I drive
Yeah.
home, here's my daughter. Come on over.
Hey.
There she
I was
is.
just in the background, just chatting.
Just saying hello.
Hey, Barb and Tina and Lori. We got all kinds of people. Hey.
Ew. So we're here today. We started out in the back today. And I thought it's always so fun. I love giving you guys something pretty to look at. We'll let you look at that again while we just wait for people to join us. Hello, everyone. Hello, Linda. And Barb and Pat and Ginny and Julie. So fun to see everybody. So I thought I would start today. There we are. Hello. I thought I'd start today with just some new arrivals we've gotten.
So FedEx came to our very back door today and he knocked on the door and I was just very confused because normally FedEx comes to like our side door and I had no idea he'd be back there. He said, "We have so many boxes for you. I thought you might want it in the back," and we pulled it up front. But we got about 35 boxes via FedEx today. So we got machines, we got tons of fabric. We got an AccuQuilt box, so I know Joyce was cheering for that. So we got lots of good stuff.
Oh, yeah, the new 4-inch cube for you AccuQuilt lovers.
Do we have that back here?
I didn't bring it back.
Oh.
I didn't bring it back. We were going to start in the front of the store and walk our way to the back of the store, but we decided instead we just start back here because
It's more fun back here.
it's just
we're in the
like
back. We're
like
hanging
it back
out.
here. All right, so we're back here, and I did bring, instead of bringing all the fabric back here, because there were, I think, 4
It was like
or 5.
12 boxes of fabric.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, yes, 4 or 5 different collections in 2 boxes each. So
And we're really happy about that because our shelves have been getting thin, and they aren't thin because I'm not ordering fabric. It's because fabric is caught on boats.
yeah, they
Still
said there
caught.
was a giant boat like outside LA that had been here for a month and it was just floating in the ocean. They wouldn't let it in, so they finally let it in and we got our fabric. So you'll have to come check it out.
Yeah, so I'll show you a few of them. I got a few little sneak peeks here for you. I didn't bring them all back, but I brought some samples back. So I'm going to flip my camera around. This is one of the things that came in. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love these. This is Allison's Glasses new.
Allison Glass.
Allison Glass.
It's not Allison's glasses.
No.
It's Allison Glass.
Allison Glass.
Yes, Allison's glasses are some of her favorite things.
So yes, Allison Glass. So sorry.
Is the designer.
It's the designer, but I think this color spectrum is so pretty, and it happens to go with a collection that's not even from the same company. This one is called Glass Beads, and it comes in about
No relation.
Yeah, they're not related, but look at how the color pops together. Is that not so fun? So this is on the purple, which I think is pretty stunning. There's a navy, and these purple, the glass beads come in all different colors. So Allison Glass and glass beads.
Yeah.
Get the connection.
They go
That's
well.
right. They go really well together. And then there's this new pattern that I think is so just fun. It's called Irony,
Oh,
which
the
I think is also
irony.
really fun. Irony is full of irons. But I thought it would be super cute with the Allison Glass solids and then with all the colors of beads. And as I said, there's about 15 beads. I just brought 3 of the bolts back. The purple and the pink. There's a white and a black, a teal, all kinds of colors.
20 bolts or so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's our one little fabric offering for you today. The next one, and again, I didn't bring the bolts back. I just brought a sample to show it to you. But it's this really pretty, I should have brought the fabric back because it's so much more vibrant than this. But it's blues and lime and royal, really pretty paisleys. And this is a very simple free pattern with this new, it's called Blue Horizon by Binnertex. And it's actually really lovely, very fresh, really bright colors. And then another new collection is Jackie Robinson, who loves to do florals, and violet and green are probably two of her favorite colors. This one is Taffeta Stars, and the name of the fabric is Miss Marguerite. And we have that whole collection in the front of the store as well. We also got a really gorgeous collection of chocolate browns called Sandalwood from Wilmington. About, I think there's 20 bolts of that. We got strip rolls, strip sets, and layer cakes. And we also got called Grape Crush, all really strong royal purple, lavender, a really nice gradation if you're a purple lover. It's really, really pretty.
You guys will have to come see it because it looks a lot better
always.
Yeah, in person.
They always look better in person. We're just giving you a snapshot of what's here. We can't show you everything. So for today, I actually thought that I would talk about needles, and I'm going to try and do this. We'll see if I can hold the phone and talk to you about needles. But I'd like to give you guys something that's a little technical when we are having our time together. And today, I thought I'd talk about needles because I got an email this week that said, why am I getting skipping stitches? I'm using a 28 weight thread, which is actually a very heavy thread. This is, here, let's do it this way. A 28 weight thread, no, that keeps it backwards, doesn't it? Okay, a 28 weight thread, and they were, when they sewed forward, it worked fine. When they sewed backwards in free motion, it did not work. And they said, what's going on? What's the secret? So I'm gonna come back and just talk to you about how needles are put together. There are all kinds of needles, as you can see. Our display, I brought it back here, and we're gonna just kind of walk through why would you use different needles for different things. There's a reason why there are so many different needles, because they interact with the thread and your fabric differently. So depending on what kind of thread and what kind of fabric you're working with, you're going to want to choose a different needle. And maybe if you understand how the needle is put together, that will give you a little insight into why it matters which one you're using. So just to get started, this is the front of a needle. This is the long shaft in the front. And our sewing machine needles all have a rounded front and a flat back. So you can see the flat back here, and then a rounded front here. And then it has a groove down the front of the needle, and then the eye obviously is at the bottom. The groove allows the thread to flow easily up and down. As your machine is sewing and making stitches, the thread actually passes through the eye of the needle about, I think they say 80 times before it actually is sewn into a stitch. So you want something that's very, very smooth for that fabric to be going up and down. You can see when it's going up and down and through the eye, how it'd be really easy for your thread to break.
Am I hold it?
Yeah, would you like to hold it?
I think you should be in here.
Okay,
yeah, you go ahead and scoot in a little bit.
There you go. So much better. Hopefully they can still hear me all right.
You project.
Okay. So the back side of the needle is also got some special action going on here. It's got a cutout in the back, and you can actually feel it on your on the back of the needle. It cuts it out, and it's called the scarf. And actually the scarf is where the hook of the bobbin runs around in its waist race. So the bobbin goes around in circles, and it takes the bobbin thread. There's a little hook that actually goes right up against that scarf. So here's the scarf, and the hook goes right up around it, and that's what actually forms the stitch. So if the needle gets deflected, or if the needle isn't quite straight, or if it doesn't have a very deep scarf, sometimes when it comes around that hook of the machine, it misses the loop of the thread. So that if you get any flexing or deflection, you're not going to get a good stitch. That will cause you a skipped stitch. So the scarf plays a really important role in how the stitch is formed. And then the shank is what we put up inside of our machine. We have the flat side, which always goes to the back of the machine, and then the rounded side is always in the front of the machine. And then obviously we have the eye, and then we have the point. Okay, so what changes when you change the type of needle that you're using is the characteristics of the point change, the characteristics of the eye change, and the characteristics of the scarf change even the groove change. So when you have those 4 things that you're working with to get a really good stitch, you can imagine that choosing the right needle for the right job is going to give you the right results. Okay, so that's the components of the needle. And now I'm just going to walk through the needles and explain to you when you would use what and why. Okay, so the first one is a universal, and we use universal all the time. If you just look quickly at this, you can see it does not have that big of an eye. Like, look at the difference between the universal needle and the embroidery needle. The embroidery needle is moving at a much faster rate. You could never sew 50,000 stitches in a minute like you can with an embroidery machine. The embroidery machine is 50,000 stitches in an hour. A minute would be very fast.
That would be way too fast.
Very fast. But even if you went full tilt with your regular sewing, as you're sewing straight stitches, you're never going to sew as fast as your embroidery machine is sewing when it's going up and down and doing all those stitches for the embroidery world. So having that larger eye allows the thread to flow through that eye just a little easier. So first thing is, if you're embroidering and you're having you're breaking thread, or your needle is breaking, or you're just having issues with your tension, switch over to an embroidery needle, because that larger eye makes a really big difference. The other thing about the universal is it has a fairly sharp tip. So you can see it's got a pretty sharp tip. Universals are the least expensive. They come in volume packs. You can often get a 10 pack. They're less expensive than a lot of the specialty needles, and they're the ones that we go to. Your embroidery, your needle threader of your sewing machine is not going to want to have an eye that's any smaller than an 80 universal. You can see that that eye is not that large. So again, we talked about this previously, that when you're trying to put your hook of your needle threader into the eye of the needle, it can't get in when that eye gets smaller and smaller. The smaller the number, the smaller the needle. So 60 is as small as they make. It's so fine. You would only use that for like a chiffon or a silk, something very special. You're not going to ever be using that for ordinary sewing. A 70 is for very lightweight fabrics, a chiffon or something like that. And then an 80, 90, 100 are more what we'd use. 80 and 90s we use for quilting all the time. That's a really standard size for a needle. So try a larger eye. If you're so universal is we use it most of the time for cotton fabrics. It's perfect. Good tip, good eye, good scarf. Mostly works. I use the universal a lot because I'm mostly piece, so that's what I usually use. The embroidery we talked about is very similar to the universal, but it does have a larger eye. When we move into a quilting needle, it actually has a sharper point. And the reason why it has that sharper point is because you want to be able to get through your batting and your piecing all the layers together. So it needs a little bit more piercing power. So a sharper point really helps with that. And you can see the difference between the universal shape and the quilting shape. The scarf, or not the scarf, but I think the groove is a really similar size. It might be a little bit deeper for that thread to have a path on the along the front edge of your needle. When you go to a sharp, you're going to use that. Sometimes with batiks, you'll notice you're sewing and you'll hear popping when you're sewing, and it's the point of the needle trying to get through that really dense fabric. So if you hear a lot of popping when you're sewing, or you're just feeling like it's making little pulls in the fabric when you are sewing, you can try and use a sharp. It's going to be used for those really dense fabrics. And you can see what a really sharp tip. It's very highly tapered, really sharp tip on the sharps. The jeans and denim, what do you think? Why would we use jeans and denim?
Is it for
Jeans and denim.
Oh, okay.
So jeans and denim are usually a larger size needle. They're a 100 or a 110. And again, you want something that's a more durable, a hardier shaft, if you can imagine, so that when it's piercing those really tough fabrics like blue jeans, it can get through them without breaking or deflecting. You don't want the needle, when it starts to penetrate the fabric, to deflect a little bit. And if you have a needle that is not strong enough for whatever fabric you're presenting to it, you might get some deflection. And again, that will cause skip stitches. So if you're sewing with denim and you're noticing skip stitches, change to a jeans denim needle. The next one is the ballpoint. And the ballpoint has a kind of a similar eye to the universal, but it has a much softer, rounder point. The reason why we do that is because it's going to be used for stretch and knit fabrics. So we don't want to actually pierce through those fibers. We want the needle to slide between them. So if you take stretchy fabric, you take a knit, and you can see how those fibers give. Instead of piercing the fiber, you want it to find its way through the fiber. So by having a duller point, it helps the needle find its way between the fibers of the fabric instead of through the fibers of the fabric. Very good for knits.
We've got a question about the quilting needle.
Yes.
Would you use that for piecing as well as actual quilting?
They actually recommend it more for the actual quilting portion. You can use it for piecing as well. And again, it just depends on how particular you are with what you want your stitch to look like. A 75 quilting needle is a really common size. It's right in between a 70 and an 80, obviously. And the universals don't come in 75s, but quiltings do. So sometimes I will use a 75 quilting just because it gives me good results. So,
Cathy uses a universal just about all the time,
I
though.
do use a lot of universal, I have to tell you, because I'm a plain Jane. I use cotton thread, I use cotton fabric. I don't quilt it myself. I just go zoom, zoom, zoom really fast when I do have a chance to sew. Okay. The top stitch needle also has an elongated tip. You can see that it's another pointy one. And sometimes they will recommend a top stitch or an embroidery. These two are both used for embroidery. And again, this is sometimes something you can experiment with. If your particular combination is giving you skip stitches or you're not liking how that stitch is forming, don't be afraid to try a different kind of needle or a different type of thread to get the results that you're looking for. But the top stitch does have that, it also has a sharper groove and a much longer eye. So it's gonna allow that thread to have more space to move in and out of that eye of the needle. The stretch is very much like the ballpoint, but not quite as, it's got a little bit sharper tip. And I don't know, I'm gonna have to plead a little ignorance here of why you would use one over the other. I should read my handout. Let's see if they say why I should use a stretch.
Yeah, we've got reference materials.
In fact, I'm going to tell you that you can come in here and get your own reference material.
That's right. We've got this lovely free handout. That's just a really nice little reference book.
And it's over by the needles. It hangs on the needles. It describes all of the needles.
So just a good kind of pocket reference because this is a lot of information, so obviously it's going to be hard to remember.
Right, and it actually sits on our display. So here's that classy display. Actually, it's usually out front, but there's a little pocket right here. So you guys feel free to grab one. You can say, I saw it on Facebook Live that there's a little needle book. We have a bunch of these in stock, so grab one, and they are free.
I know all of a sudden we're going to run out of those. I'm sure you guys are going to come.
We'll know that you guys are really listening if you come in and get one of these little booklets. But the stretch needles have a special scarf. Remember, the scarf is the back of it to eliminate skip stitches when there is flex in the fabric. Interesting. So for knits, swimwear, fleece, synthetic suedes, and leathers. So anytime you're, it just helps keep the flex out of the needle. And then let's see what the ballpoint says, because now I'm curious. I think it says
she
the same
did
thing.
study ahead of time.
I did look. I actually know most of this stuff in my brain.
She's been doing this a long time.
So the ballpoint needles have a more rounded point, so they don't snag or run your knits. That's the difference. So one is to flex with the fabric, and the other is to keep from getting a snag or a pull. So use the ballpoint if you get any snags. Okay.
Cool.
Metallic needle has, again, a larger eye, and that's because those metallic threads need a little more relaxation through the eye of the needle. Also with metallic, I would highly recommend that you do not have it sit on top of your machine. Metallics really need some time to relax before they get down to where they're forming the stitch. So using a side thread stand or a vertical thread stand is really, really helpful. If you don't have one, you can use a coffee cup and put your spool in a coffee cup and then come up to the top and then over on your machine. You do want to really make sure that you avoid your hand wheel, because you can snag that thread in a hand wheel and it will scoop it all up. And we've had that happen to a few customers.
And you probably also want to slow down a little bit with metallic threads,
Absolutely.
right? They are very fragile threads that, using the right needle, slowing it down a little bit.
Right, absolutely.
Another question, Barb Nickel asks, what do you recommend for cork?
Cork would probably want a sharp, I would think. I think it'd want something that's going to give a really clean poke through it. definitely not ballpoint. You wouldn't want something dull. You'd want something. I think a sharp would be really good for.
Or even a jeans and denim, right? A little bit.
They're heavy though.
They are heavy.
Jean and denim is a big needle. I think a sharp, you could use an 80 sharp and not create so many holes.
That's true.
That's what I think. I would think you'd want a finer needle, but sharp. Now, Pam may have another opinion.
Yeah.
I wish she was back here to ask her because she's the one who actually does all
That's
that.
true. That's true.
Yes. Leather is going to be, again, a more tapered point, and it's, I would think that actually would work well for cork as well.
A good point.
Now that we think about it. Let's see what they say about leather, because it's fun to see. The wedge-shaped point of the leather needle is specifically designed to penetrate leather and artificial leather, which is kind of like cork. It's not suitable for textiles. So now I'm confused. I think textiles are cloth, and so maybe the leather needle is the right needle for cork.
Good. Linda uses universal with cork all the time.
Linda, you're my kind of girl. I know.
It's true.
I love my universals. Okay, anti-glue is a Teflon. It's for when you're going through sticky stabilizers and or for machine applique where they can get a lot of gummy on the needle as you're stitching. If you use a sticky stabilizer, you will actually notice a buildup on your needle, and you can feel it. The needle gets rough. You have to change those needles a lot because once they start getting rough, then all bets are off. You've got to change the needle. So this anti-glue is like a Teflon coated just to help.
It's a non-stick.
Yeah, a non-stick. Exactly. Anti-glue, non-stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can cook on it.
The hem stitch is a specialty needle for those decorative heirloom sewing that so few of us do anymore. But they are the ones that actually punch a hole in the fabric, and then the thread kind of holds it so that you have hem stitches on your machine. They're actually called hem stitches. And the whole point is to kind of spread the fibers. So you spread them apart, you're not breaking them, and you're creating a small hole, and then you have decorative thread in between. So like smocking patterns and things like that, you get a second effect by having the holes in it. So that's a very unique specialty. It's a wide blade. It's kind of almost like a blade. You can see how fat it is. It's much fatter than the regular needles. The twin needles have two needles on one shank. So you put it in just like you would an ordinary needle, but you're going to have to thread two different threads through your machine. Usually what I do is my tension disc at the top of my machine have a left side and a right side, and I put one thread going through the left and the other thread going through the right. Almost all of them have the two symbols with the center post, so put one thread on this side and the other thread on this side as they come through the machine, and then put your left thread into the left and the right thread into the right needle. They come in all different sizes, so the sizes go from 2 millimeters to 6 millimeters, and that's how far apart the top stitch or the twin needles are from each other. So when you put a twin needle in your machine, you want to make sure that you tell your machine that you have a twin needle in it, because the machine doesn't know that you're not in that center needle position. So when you select a zigzag on your machine, it's assuming that you have a single needle in the single needle position, so that if you give it a 6 millimeter width when it goes back and forth, it's not going to break a needle on your foot. With a twin needle, there's two needles, and now that swing, if you do a 6 millimeter, you can very easily hit the side of your foot and break your needle. Twin needles are expensive, so you don't want to break them on your feet. The other thing is you often will get a preview on your machine if you can set it to twin needle, and it'll show you what that stitch is going to look like stitched out with two. The bobbin thread turns into a zigzag on the back. So even if you're doing parallel straight stitch lines, the back will look like a zigzag. There's no way to get parallel lines top and back. So just know that if you're using it as a top stitch, you're going to get a zigzag on the back side of it. The last one are serger needles, and the serger needles have a different scarf in the back, and they're really particularly used in needles that go in a slanted position on the serger. So some sergers, the needle actually goes in slightly angled like that. If you have a machine that does that, you absolutely want to use a serger needle because the scarf is a little bit deeper. For the baby locks, generally they are very vertical. Not generally, they are very vertical. And so they can accept universal needles. But if you're doing a cover stitch and you're having trouble with sometimes it's skipping stitches, if you switch over to an EL needle, which is the signature for serger needle, you'll probably get a lot better results. So with all those needles, all of them come in different sizes. We have 3 or 4 different brands in the store. We have the Classe, we have Inspira, we have Schmetz, we have Bernina. All of them are high quality, well engineered needles. And it's just people kind of get loyal to a brand, but I think you also get loyal to whatever's available. So if we are out of a Universal in one brand, don't be afraid to try a Universal in a different brand. You might be really happy with the results. Okay, I think all of your brains should be spinning by now.
My brain's spinning.
Alrighty.
I just learned a lot.
Alrighty. I hope that you guys found something really useful in today's presentation, and we will see you all next week.